Well, first, congratulations.
Appreciate it.
We understand certainly that you and Will will both be balancing. I'm sure you've leaned on Dan a bit in terms of the logistics, but take us into what that actually looks like, Tosh, because like when Dan did it 4 years ago, he had the benefit of late nights with a time zone. You don't. So like, are you conducting job interviews at like 5 a.m. and 10 p.m. and because you couldn't do it on the plane to Hawaii? So like, what is this actually looking like?
Yeah, it just gets later. So, but I think what's really important is devoting the proper time and commitment to a really good opponent and making sure you commit to that and not interrupt that. And then, and then you separate yourself when you feel like you've accomplished your duties for the day, that and this opponent is demanding a lot of respect from us. They do a really good job. So, not going to cut that short of any focus or attention to detail there. Just had a great practice, and that's the approach. So, I mean, ultimately, I even get to the point, James, where when we're doing our game plan, I'll put my phone in the cabinet, and my wife knows if there's any emergency to let Cody or Matt know, and I think that's the only way to do it, and just lock in and focus. And then when we feel like we've got to the point where we get to the position meetings at night and we've wrapped some things up and debrief the practice, then of course there's been some late nights, no doubt.
Thank you, Earl. Eric.
Gosh, yesterday we talked to Will and kind of asked him what went behind the decision to stay on through the duration. So I'll just ask you the same thing. Why was it important for you to stay here through the playoff run?
Yeah, I made it clear because of this team, because of this university, the elite players I've been fortunate to coach and be a part of the staff. This is this was one of a few opportunities this go around, and I made it clear on every one of those Thursday night interviews that I will not participate or even consider the job without finishing through our season. So ultimately, that was a bit of a deal breaker for another place, and that's fine. I respect their process, but that was very clear. You know, People have asked me as well with Coach Lanning, how that went about or how that conversation was, and I honestly don't even think we had a single conversation, and it was just a realized expectation of exactly what would be asked of me and what I would want to do. So, I made it very clear over my dead body, would I ever leave the individuals here, that one, they have put myself and my family in this position, and two, I'm not. I want to finish what we started here. This is been an amazing year to be a part of. In this group, what they've accomplished and how they've played as a whole team. But certainly for myself on the defensive side of the ball, it's something that we're all really proud of, and we got a really cool opportunity here to keep it rolling.
Right here on the right, Zach.
I'm sure even before you accepted the job, you were very excited to play inside Autzen one more time. Has that elevated at all, increased at all, knowing this will be your last time coaching inside Autzen?
No, no, it hasn't. This has been an awesome experience, amazing place. We've had an amazing 4 years here, and truly the outside elements have nothing to do with it for me. So whether we're playing in a backyard or in Autzen, we're going to approach it the exact same, prepare the exact same, and try to compete to a high standard.
Fourth row, Matt, on the left.
When you came here, Oregon was traditionally known as an offensive school.
That's right.
I think you've changed that narrative.
I agree.
What do you feel like your legacy, what do you want to be known for of your time here? Because you've made a pretty substantial impact of how Oregon is viewed.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, first off, it's not me making this substantial impact. It's us, supported by an amazing staff. Fortunately, now the way we work in recruiting and the way our talent acquisition has increased and improved, that all goes into it. So it's because of the players I'm blessed to coach, because of the leadership under Coach Lanning and Phil Knight and Rob Mullins that's put us in this position, quite frankly. So moving forward, absolutely. I think there's a standard that's been set here, that we've changed that narrative. As you mentioned, I agree with you, what this place is kind of known for maybe, 2 decades or so. And we're really proud of that, to how we finished and relinquished the least amount of points since 1966 and where our defense has grown to. That was the goal ultimately, and we knew coming into this thing how much work, it would require. And again, when when you're blessed to coach the young men that I get to here, it makes it a whole lot of fun.
In the middle, Tyson.
How different is it where at the end of at the end of Alabama, you were on the staff of somebody who was the most accomplished coach in all of college football, and then you come a little bit later to Oregon for a guy who's just kind of starting his story as a head coach. What were the differences for you in between working for a guy just starting versus a guy finishing up, and what did you kind of learn from Dan over your 4 years?
Yeah, it's a great question. To answer your original question, it's I think this profession a lot to do with is who you believe in, and ultimately I believe in Dan Lanning, so Dan Lanning, we had a good relationship. Dan was my GA at Alabama, and it was very evident, his drive, his commitment, the ball coach that he was going to become and what he is today, the search for growth, to constant improve. And so there was a reason when I went off to the NFL, we stayed in close contact, and constantly did Zooms and bounced ideas off of each other. And then when that moment occurred, it was something I believed in, so I think a lot of it is just rolling with the people you believe in ultimately. And that's extremely important. So when you believe in someone, like I do with Coach Lanning, and he believed in me, we knew regardless of how much work it was going to take, or, some of these stats were literally in the 127th as far as defense. And, it was about rolling our sleeves up, going on the attack and making this better every day. And here we are. So, what was really evident and impressive to me coming aboard was how much he had advanced from an offensive knowledge standpoint and special teams, just like he does here. He oversees special teams, offense and defense. So that was something evident in year one of, this is something I want to improve on. I want to just not just necessarily see it from a defensive perspective. So 4 years later here, ultimately, I've gained a lot of confidence in those categories as well. And still to this day, don't have all the answers. And that's why I love this profession so much, is the constant grind to grow, in all those categories. But how we interact with our offense, myself, Will Stein would constantly cross over, be in each other's offices. We'd see some concepts, say, man, this is like an issue right here. I've been spending 30 minutes on trying to figure out the answer to this, or how we pattern match this bunch route or whatever it be. So, and Will doing the same thing, so I think that's what ultimately this environment's all about, this culture's all about, and something I'm really fortunate to be a part of.
Back right, Aaron.
James Madison just has a really impressive run game. Now that you got a chance to look at the film, dive deep into it, just what makes their run game so hard to stop? And given the weather conditions on Saturday, what role will stopping the run play in the success?
Yeah, great question. Well, it starts with Wayne Knight and Alonzo Barnett, number 3 and number 14. They are legitimate. Wayne Knight is an NFL player, a running back. He could play at any conference, at any team. I can promise you that. And the quarterback's the Sun Belt Conference Player of the Year for a reason. He's thrown for 4 touchdowns in a game. He's rushed for 4 touchdowns in a game. And then it's complemented by a really good scheme. It reminds me, when we game plan an opponent, we look at early what their identity is, and that's one of our goals, is to take away their identity, what they do best. So when you look at a team, you want to defeat the run, okay, and then you dive into the things. They have split zone and zone scheme, inside hat, counter GT. They run with the quarterback. They give you a lot of variety, very similar to our offense. They're multiple, and they've got good players there ultimately. So I think what's critical is when you start to hang your hat on stopping one thing, they can hurt you another way. So just the attention to detail has been huge on our fundamentals and technique. Being elite, taking aggressive angles in the tackling approach is going to be very important in this game. Our goal of generating takeaways, as we did these last few weeks and in Seattle, ultimately helping for our success. So, but this is a team. I mean, you could load up the box and try to stop the run. It's a quarterback that's he'll have some NFL opportunities. He's ran a 21.5 on his catapult MPH, and he can hurt you with his legs, and he can throw the ball well.
Back left, Olivia.
It's no secret that the stakes of this game are higher than a regular season game. As a coach, how are you approaching that with the defense? Are you acknowledging the stakes of this game and using them as a motivating factor, or kind of ignoring them and putting emphasis on consistency?
Yeah, I think it's extremely important to just focus mainly on the execution, and not on the emotion. So we know those emotions will be high. So it's also being able to recognize that and accept that. There's nothing wrong with that. But the more we focus on the end result, we're taking away from something we can improve on right now, and that's really the goal. So I think the first thing is this is an opponent that we haven't been familiar with. So early on is showing them this is a real team, this is a real opponent. They're here for a reason. It does not take too long to prove that, based off of their explosives, being the number one rushing offense in their conference, number six rushing offense in the country, the players that we've highlighted and showed. So I don't think there's a big buy-in as far as, trying to convince these guys, but more so just directing the focus on what we need to do to go win, and that's what we just did for two hours or so out there on the field, how these morning meetings start, how our walkthrough went. That's what I'm constantly challenging them this week is, supposedly where we are from a statistic standpoint, defense, where we are in the nation, how's the best defense operate? How do they do a walkthrough? How do they do a meeting? What's their approach? How do we transition on the field, going in and out, and how do we substitute? Every single detail, putting the focus towards that.
Josh, we're going to go to Zoom. Aaron, your question?
Hi, Coach. Curious, given your history as a recruiter and talent evaluator, have you been at all impressed with how James Madison has rebuilt its roster after losing 13 players to Indiana when Signetti left? They got FCS kids, Division II kids, Power 4 kids transferring down to get to this position.
Yeah, of course. Very much so. I mean, they've done a great job there. There's a reason they're in the position they are. So absolutely. I think there's probably some history and culture there to recognize as well. When you watch the TV copies, I mean, it's a sold out stadium. They're fired up, rocking in there. Obviously the success of who was there before them and moving on and having the success he has. So I think, it's important to recognize the culture that's been established there and embraced, and they've done a great job.
Staying with Zoom, Adam.
Yeah, Tosh, I know when you were at Alabama, there were a number of coordinators that were in your position that got a job, ahead of the playoff. I'm wondering how you've kind of looked at that experience, or did you ever wonder what it's actually like to do both at once back then? That obviously now you're in that position.
Yeah, I think it's been fortunate and advantage to go through that a little bit, and see how Kirby Smart operated, at that time, Jeremy Pruitt, and then being involved with this process with Dan Lanning. So hopefully, I've been able to benefit, and again, just try to balance as best as possible, and put the commitment, at the right time, So once again, all attention to detail and focus, giving these players and this organization everything I got, in the approach, and then having a few energy drinks and a coffee at night, resetting, and getting involved. I had a long, thorough Zoom last night with the academic department, checking up on all our academics and making sure we're being accountable, at the other place, before their opportunity to go with Coach Rolovich over there to Hawaii. So, that's the approach. I'm gonna do it as best as possible, and we'll see how it goes.
And with Zoom, Tommy.
Tosh, what do you see with Nick DeGennaro and Landon Ellis on JMU? Each of them are over 6 feet, and they're the two leading receivers on JMU's team.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, what do you see with Nick DeGennaro and Landon Ellis for JMU, the two wide receivers?
Yeah, I think there's 13, 0, 10, and 11 that jump out. And they all got different skill sets. There's an individual that's got the longest average depth of target, double move guy, love run downfield shots. It's a big part of their offense. The slots of 0 and 10, they're elusive, shifty, do a great job. So again, that's what I mentioned earlier is, you could have the approach of we got to go stop this run and do it and load the box and as soon as you start to do that, this is an advanced system. They know exactly how to deal with it. Like I said, it's very similar to our system. So when you put your defense in that position, they're going to try to make you pay in other ways, and they've got a great variety of formations. They get into unbalanced quads, diamond bunch type. There's multiplicity of this offense, so they make you prepare, and I respect it.
Last question here on the left, third row.
That's just a little bit, but just curious over the past 2 weeks, what have you learned about yourself? Splitting time between the two jobs, like where have you grown?
Well, I'm trying to grow every day. I think I gave that example earlier of compartmentalizing your time, is really important. So it's enormous for me of writing things down and making sure I accomplish those things. So sticking to that, by doing that, you're gonna hurt some people's feelings, not texting them back or not calling them back. And I look at it as every 10 seconds, every 20 seconds of conversations or text messages that ultimately adds up, and I might have 2 hours away from the priority at hand, and that's giving everything I can to this group and putting us in the best position to go play a great defensive game and win this. So attempting to fight that urge or respond back, and having that important time to devoting it the right way.